The season is officially here. It's media day. Camille and I have some thoughts. What do we want to hear? Who do we want to hear from? We get into it next on today's Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. My name is Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. You can hear me on the Bucks Radio Network. Next Monday, 1 week from today, our first preseason game in Miami against the Heat. You can hear Camille as an analyst on the Locked On NBA show, the Technical Foul podcast as well. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. It is like the first day of school. Camille, certainly that'll have the feel for me as you go back to the arena surrounded by some people like, oh, yeah, I haven't seen that guy in 3 or 4 months. And, of course, the players, a lot of them new this time. So it's going to have a much different feel for Media Day. I mean, I guess let's start there. I mean, you look at last year was year number 2 of the Giannis Dame experiment, and it was another year where the pieces were largely the same. You just did some tinkering on the edges. The year prior was the big, highly anticipated one with the Damian Lillard debut in Milwaukee. But prior to that, every year after 2018, same feel of like this team is largely the same. They just made some minor tweaks. We did not have an in-person media day when Jrue Holiday became a Buck, so that's the caveat there. But this one's going to take on a bit of a different feel as it's basically, all right, Giannis, Bobby's still here. Oh, hey, Thanasis is back, and now a bunch of new guys.
Yeah, like those are your long-standing Bucks there, and Thanasis wasn't even on the roster technically last year. I mean, he saw him around, but not a member of the Milwaukee Bucks. So, like, those are your 3 OGs on the team for the most part. But then you do have some guys who are returning for like their second year with the Bucks, or some of the younger guys there. So, like a Gary Trent Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., really interested in hearing from both of them about their summer, how they approached it, things of that sort. But there's like continuity, but also not continuity. Like it's the first edition of the Milwaukee Bucks post, 2018 here, where there's no Brook Lopez. Like now you're welcoming in Myles Turner. There's no Chris Middleton for this media day. Like we know he was traded mid-season, but he was still part of the media day, experience last year. So the first media day without a Chris Middleton, there's no Dame here now. So it's a big turnover from what we thought the core of the team was going to be last year to what it is now, which is Giannis, and hoping like a lot of guys can perform their roles really well around him. But you lack that other superstar. You lack that other guy that you can point to and be like, hey, this is who we're expecting to be like the number 2 or to show up in these big moments. Like there's guys who we think can do it, but there's no hierarchy that's been settled yet. So it's like different, but like same, but different at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, well, Myles Turner's number 1. When we say, who are we most looking forward to hear from? And I believe you can stream this as well, that the Bucks have traditionally done that. But I would imagine we're going to get Myles Turner right out of the gates, and he's going to be the guy that everybody's got questions for. We mentioned before when he had his press conference in Vegas during Summer League, Eric Name was the only local reporter that was out there for Summer League. So didn't really get his taste of the Milwaukee media. And he's going to be the guy that a lot of this is pinned on with the offseason, obviously waving and stretching Damian Lillard, his pairing with Giannis. So there's going to be a lot of intrigue and questions for Myles, many of which I would assume he can't get into and answer. But when did the recruiting start? How did this come to play? What have you been told about your role? When did you start to seriously consider this? Like, these are all things I'm very curious of it. And to be clear, I don't think we would get a transparent response to this one. But my number 1 question for Myles Turner, if I could inject him with some truth serum, is, so just give me the timeline, dude. Like, when did this start to fall into place. And, we talked about it with Tony. I think it's kind of out there to read between the lines. But when Tyrese Halliburton went down with that injury, like, did you at the time think, how is this going to impact my free agency? Did you think like, oh, that's a bummer, but we still got the group coming back together? Like, how did this start to layer in place here where all of a sudden the reports of that $30 million a year offer the Pacers were willing to do just kind of vanished, and you were left looking around to say, okay, I guess I'll go to this team that I was supposed to
go to this team I was supposed to have a blood feud with for the rest of my time in the Pacers jersey. But no, I think I would love to know that too. I saw that the Bucks had like a fan version kind of like of media day yesterday where Myles Turner spoke. Doc Rivers was there. John Horst was there. They announced this really last minute too. Like it came to the forefront of everyone's knowledge.
I don't want to speak out of school here, but you've done it long enough. When media day is.
Yeah.
They didn't make the formal announcement and invitation until extremely last minute. I even had a few people reach out like, hey, have you got anything for media day? Like, I want to say it was like Thursday that you got the email. Like, by the way, media day is Monday, RSVP now.
Well, then it's on brand. It's on brand for media and for fans alike with the event that they had this Sunday. But yeah, I want to know a lot. If I could ask Myles the one question, I really want to know, like, everybody's talking about the Myles Turner, Giannis front court. And even he mentioned it yesterday of like, it's going to be scary. Like Giannis is we're on the same team. Yeah. It's going to be scary. But I'd be curious to know from Myles, like, what style of play is he looking to play? Like, what do you want to do here? Like, we've talked about the defensive schemes here for the Bucks, how it was drop heavy. We talked about last year, some of the changes that they were attempting to make here along the way. But I would just want to hear from Myles of like, when you envision yourself on the court with Giannis, like, what does the style of play look like for you? Especially coming from a Pacers team that we know can get up and down. Like, is that your preferred style of play? Like, I would just have some style of play questions for Myles off top. And like, how do you envision this? How have you been training this off season to get ready to play next to Giannis rather than playing with the Pacers, which is a different experience here with such a heliocentric star in a certain degree with Giannis. So just the differences there and how he wants to adjust his game to that and how he plans to bring the best out of Giannis too, because I agree that front court can be and should be scary, but we also thought that the Dame Giannis partnership would be even more scary than what they put on tape here, even though, highest scoring duo in the league last year. Still felt like there was some meat on those bones. So really curious to know from Myles just how he sees things.
Yeah. And, I think it's natural to bring up too, that the other guy that's kind of tied in here that I'm very curious to hear from is Bobby Portis, because, we outright speculated if he was even going to be back in Milwaukee and what the market was for Bobby. You started to hear other teams too, like, oh, the Golden State Warriors, who just now, yesterday, signed Al Horford to a quote unquote multi-year deal. Okay. Like, let's bring the same energy of this team's too old to Golden State that we brought to Milwaukee then. But, we heard that team kicked around and a few others that kept popping up, and you wondered, like, well, it's a pretty good value deal for Bobby. Is there more money out there? He came back for the same money. And now you come back where I think we were all kind of thinking Brook Lopez is probably gone. So one of the sells on Bobby Portis is, hey, your role is going to expand. And it may still expand, but when you add Myles Turner and you retain Jericho Sims, I'm very curious to hear from Bobby Portis similar things, his timeline. And so what's been communicated to you about the role you're going to take on? Because you would think backup center, and save for those minutes that you're playing next to Giannis, it's just not going to happen this year with Myles Turner and Jericho Sims on the roster.
Yeah, it's not. And Jericho Sims is another name I'm interested too. Like, there are quite a few questions that I have. And I also really want to hear from Doc Rivers about some of the things that he might be envisioning for the team this upcoming season. Of course, there are things that have to be settled and determined in training camp, which is going to get underway this week as well here in Milwaukee before they head to Miami for the last 3 days to kind of finish up camp before that preseason game against the Heat. But I have a lot of like lineup questions, rotation questions for Doc Rivers, and how he might approach things differently this upcoming season than what he has in the last year and a half here as the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the lineups. I got some questions on that. I also have some questions on the formatics and the coaching. We also got the training camp roster that included the coaches. There's no surprises attached there. Obviously, our boy, the Prunk Dog Millionaire, is no longer a part of the coaching staff, but that was really the big piece of it. So lineups and how is this team going to play offensively and defensively? We'll get into that coming up after this. Well, caffeine's just got a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots, delivering tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee. Plus, you get B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What I love most about 5-hour energy is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot, and you can take it anywhere whenever you need to get that boost of energy. I take several of them with me this time of year. Every single day for Bucks games, I always keep multiple in my bag with me at all times. I reach for the extra strength grape whenever I can get it. Also, don't mind the pomegranate or berry. Enough with the boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in-store and online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. That is the number 5hourenergy.com. All right, Camille. Defense. Let's start there. I'm curious, and we're not going to hear from Greg Buckner today, but I'm very curious. How are you guys going to play defensively? Because saw that kind of revamp last year, and we talked about, there's a lot of things that Buck did in Cleveland with the Twin Towers. You still have that with Myles Turner and Giannis, and you have a much closer version to the Cavs there with Giannis in the Evan Mobley role. And I think Myles Turner is a really good comp, much better defensively for Jared Allen than Brook Lopez was. So, like, are we going to see that? Are we going to continue to see a lot of drop defense? How aggressive are you going to be on the perimeter? And, you look back at the defensive lineups of the Indiana Pacers that found success a year ago. I think Tyrese Halliburton is a better defender than he gets credit for.
Yeah, I'd agree.
I'm not saying he's good or, among the best in the league, but I think he's better. And I think people slowly realize that okay, guy's just not an easy target to pick at. And, the groupings that they had on the floor where they found a lot of success. We talked about the comps to Cleveland, but Giannis and Myles Turner comps incredibly well to Pascal Siakam and Myles Turner. I think Kevin Porter Jr. comps pretty well to Tyrese Halliburton. The big difference is those two other guys that take on a massive role in Nesmith and Nembhard. I think we'd agree Aaron Nesmith was the best defender individually that the Pacers had. Bucks don't have that on this roster. And even Nembhard, it's what we've talked about all summer. He can defend really one, arguably, but 2 through 4 with his size. So that's what you're still searching for. You can replicate some, but not all in that model. But, the sample size component. We heard John Horst talk about it. We spent the show talking about it as well. So if we looked at playoffs only, looking at the top 10 5-man lineups, that preferred lineup that the Bucks had of Giannis, Bobby Portis, AJ Green, Gary Trent Jr., and Kevin Porter Jr. Defensively in the playoffs, where would you think that ranked?
Ooh, I would guess probably I know the numbers weren't necessarily great in the playoffs. Let's say, 9th?
Number 7 defense by lineup throughout. And granted, it was 5 games technically, but it wasn't 5 true games worth of data. But it was number 7. it was one spot in front of the aforementioned group that we just put out there in the Indiana Pacers. That's where that defense sat. It was right up there um, with the Minnesota Timberwolves of Naz Reid, Julius Randle, McDaniels, DiVincenzo, and Anthony Edwards. And there's some things there that you look at and you say the modernization and switchability that they bring. Like, let's lean into this. And now, I don't like in those lineups. Does Myles Turner make you noticeably better defensively than having Bobby Portis?
I mean, theoretically,
Think.
yeah, like theoretically, it should, you would think, based on what we've seen both of those guys put on tape over the last few years here. And again, I want to give Bobby credit for the way that he was battling last year. Again, he was also part of why those lineups worked, not just those three guards out there, but having another big next to Giannis that could just move a little bit better than what Brook Lopez could at that point was really helpful. Plus, again, he continues to have the floor spacing ability that you need as a big next to Giannis. So yeah, I mean, I think that's all very valid too. And I got defensive questions. Definitely want to hear about that from Doc and from the crew. But I'm also curious on the other side of the ball as well, and just how they plan to do things. Like Doc has made jokes at times like, oh, the rotation. Yeah, I know 9, too many. Like that's too many right now. Like I'm trying to get that rotation down some. That's one thing I really want to know. And we've mentioned it over the summer here on Locked On Bucks too, but do you plan to go deeper in that bench throughout the regular season? Like, is there an ideal minute allocation that you're trying to hit for Giannis, given the fact that we're all expecting for Giannis to have the ball in his hands more often? He's going to be asked to do a bit more from playmaking, shot creation. He's just going to be the engine for this team. Is there a certain amount of minutes a game that you're looking to get him for so that you don't burn them out, just trying to make sure it's a long season? We're trying to do this. And does depth play a part in that of like, hey, we're actually going to look to be 10 deep in the regular season here because we want to make sure we're managing minutes, similar to kind of the Pacers way of like, we're going to continue to play guys deep because we want to make sure come playoff time, guys are as fresh as they possibly can be after an 82 game, maybe 83 game season with the NBA Cup in there. But I'm curious too, just about rotation and like, how deep does he want this lineup to actually go? And then too of like, what do guys have to do to earn that time? Because I found that really interesting last year where he mentioned out loud of, AJ Green we had him on the paper as being a guy to start. Didn't have a great training camp, had to move him down. Pat Connaughton got those minutes. Like, I'm curious to know also, like, heading into camp, what do we think it might be? And of course, camp's going to determine some things, but just going into it, where are you at in the ballpark of what that rotation might look like?
Yeah, that's, I didn't consider that one of rotation, but yeah, like how do you view this season? Like, are you going to lean into your depth during the regular season and find what works, especially with so many moving pieces? Like, is there something to be said of, well, we just, we got to see what we have here and lean into that? Or is it just, we talked about the small sample size, but we know this works. Let's figure out how to optimize this even more offensively. We talked about defensively and like, what's going to be the approach here? How are we going to play? Are your questions larger on offense of like, hey, we know John Horst said he wants to see more threes, but number one, tell me how you're getting there. And secondly, like, what else are we doing? Because my one fear is, well, and fear may be a strong word, but it can't get to the point of, for as much as we've heard, we're just going to lean on Giannis and everything's going to run through him. It cannot be 4 guys standing around watching Giannis.
Absolutely cannot be. The off-ball movement has to be there. Like, I think it was 2 weeks ago, 1 week. Again, off-season stuff always runs together by this point, where I was like, I would love to see the Bucks bring in like some Kyle Korver type sets for an AJ Green. Like, what does that look like if you're running him through off-ball screens and making defenders chase him, knowing just how lethal he is from three? What does that look like? So I'm with you on wanting to make sure that the offense has some more off-ball movement, and also to the point of how to get more threes up, something that we've talked about. Like, yeah, we want to see the raw numbers go up, but who are we envisioning to be like the table setters for this team? Who is putting that on their shoulders of like, we need you to play make? Like I saw at the Sunday fan media day yesterday, Doc Rivers made a joke about Kevin Porter Jr., where he said, Kev came up to him and said, coach, I've been a starter before. I've been a starting point guard before. And Doc replied, yeah, but like we want a winning starting point guard. Like there's levels to this. And he was, of course, laughing and joking about it. But we always know what they say. What makes jokes funny was a little bit of hint of truth in there somewhere. And that hint of truth is just like, they're going to need so much, I think, from Kevin Porter Jr., decision-making, playmaking, shot creation. Who else is planning to take on that playmaking role for the Bucks outside of Giannis? Who are the Bucks looking to be like, hey, we want the ball in your hands, go get a bucket? Who are they counting on at this point to be the shot creator? As we know, things can change over the course of a season, but heading in, I'm just curious of like what guys' roles are. Like we heard last year, TP talking about, I studied all of this tape about where the passes come from Dame and Giannis and Chris and where the 3-point shots are going to be. What else are guys looking for this upcoming year? What spots are they looking to hit consistently throughout this season?
Yeah. And I'm also curious how you kind of view guys' roles too. Like,
Yep.
I don't imagine we'll get, and it's fair if we don't, because you also, this isn't like fitting into that comfortable pair of jeans anymore. It's a totally different pant that you bought here. So we got to see, maybe it does work better with Ryan Rollins, or maybe, no, we should do this. So like, you need training camp and you need the preseason to really sort all of that out. But like, what do you envision for the roles between those three guys specifically? I think that's the most intriguing of Ryan Rollins, Kevin Porter Jr., and Cole Anthony. Like, is Cole Anthony the guy that's going to be the spark plug and the energizer off the bench, and KPJ is the starter that you're going to have to lean on? And we've talked about his importance. Is he theoretically going to be your second leading scorer? Is Ryan Rollins that guy that you can just kind of fit in any of those scenarios? Like, how do you view this? And then in turn, how does that relate to the next group of three, and Gary Trent Jr. and AJ Green and Gary Harris you can throw in there?
Yeah, you absolutely could. And that's the fun thing about Media Day, because everything's new. We're going to, of course, hear all of the cliches that you hear on the Media Day, of best shape of my life and all of these other things. But I'm curious to see if we get anything in between those lines, or if anybody is just really, really blunt about what their expectations are coming into the season for their role, and what they were here to do, especially some of like the newer guys like a Gary Harris, of like, what made you sign in Milwaukee? Like, what do you envision your role being here? What made you come here? Cole Anthony as well. Like, what is the role that you envision yourself playing here for the team, which could ultimately be different than the role we see them, play out for the team, but would be really interested to know that as well.
So those are the broad questions that we have for Media Day. What else have we missed? What else is out there? We'll get these questions answered in a mere matter of hours here, Camille, as it continues to loom closer and closer. We'll wrap up that part of the conversation coming up next on Locked On Bucks. NFL season's here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. What you'll love about FanDuel is how easy it is to use. It gives you so many ways to play. You can build parlays, try player props, even follow the live lines during games. Makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or you just love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. All right. So I'm also, one name we didn't bring up.
I wonder if we're thinking of the same name.
Go ahead.
Kuz.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
I mean, honestly, we should have pushed him further in the conversation here, earlier, I should say. Because I still think, and we talked about it on our crossover with Koo, who
had strong feelings.
Not a Kyle Kuzma fan, I think we'll put it lightly here. I still think he's going to be a very searching for the right wording here. He's going to be a central figure for the Bucks this season. That if we see a bounce back, bounce back is a little harsh, but like if we just see you figure out how to make this work, and okay, we got something here, and we're going to lean into these types of lineups and actions for Kuzma. That could be, I don't want to, overinflate it, but it could be a game changer of sorts for the Bucks. If it doesn't, it prompts questions that are going to arise the first week of February and then in the offseason when he becomes an expiring contract. So Kyle Kuzma, to me, even with the addition of Myles Turner, even with leaning on Giannis, and could we get Giannis back to MVP Giannis, what you would think you're asking in terms of jump from guys in the backcourt, Kyle Kuzma may have the biggest spotlight on him this season.
Yeah, I do. Like, I learned Locked On NBA, I believe it was yesterday's show, one of the more recent shows. The show was around which NBA players taking a leap would affect their teams the most and what that leap would have to be for them. And I was thinking about it in a Bucks lens of like, if Kyle Kuzma is can knock down the three at a decent clip. I'm not even asking him to be a 40% 3-point shooter, but can you be 36 somewhere in that range? If you can be like a 36% 3-point shooter, what does that do for the Milwaukee Bucks if he can do that on a pretty decent volume? Kyle Kuzma is one of those guys this year where I think individual players to interview at Media Day. Giannis, of course, is going to be fascinating because of the summer that he had and all of the smoke around him and his future in Milwaukee. So, of course. But Kuzma is the one where you can look at what happened in the playoffs and everyone can say, like, didn't play well enough. And it's not, a secret, like, just didn't play well enough. It didn't go the way that it was envisioned. I'm curious to know for him what his offseason was, what his focus was for the offseason. Also curious to know if he does think of himself more naturally on this team as a 4 or a 3. Like, I'm curious to know where he's more comfortable playing as well. And again, that 3-point shooting could be a big swing scale for him this upcoming season. But a lot on Kuzma. Like, he's someone who some are projecting to start. Again, we've been talking about the lineup that worked well in the playoffs with the juniors and AJ Green and Giannis, and being like, that's where you need to go. But there's a big Kyle Kuzma sized hole where you're like, okay, well, what do we do with Kuz? Because again, the defense was better than what I thought it would be from him coming aboard on this team. The playmaking even flashed a little more than I thought Kuz had in him. So I'm curious for him, like, what was the offseason like? What are you working on? What do you plan to do? What role do you want to be in? Like, where do you feel more comfortable? And yeah, the Kuz questions, like there's a few with him, and I think they're all going to be extremely fascinating to hear.
Yeah, and I think what you brought up there, the most important part is, for both sides, Kyle Kuzma and the organization, like, how do you view Kyle Kuzma? Like, what is the role? Is he a backup 4? Is he a 3? How many lineups are we going to see Kyle Kuzma and Giannis and another big that you lean into that size? As you noted, there's a lot of teams that are leaning into size this season and really last season as well. So, yeah, getting that perspective on Kyle Kuzma is going to be very, very interesting here. Also, we mentioned the name, but I am curious to hear from Scoot and how does he continue to evolve and how does he take the next step here? You shared some of the guidance that Doc Rivers joked with him on, but I'm sure there's been a lot of that, and it helps to have your head coach a former point guard in this league that can tell you, like, hey, let's cut this out, let's just lean into this type of thing, because just as we said, Kyle Kuzma is going to have a big spotlight on him. KPJ is going to be, I still think, the second most important player on this team.
Yeah, and another guy who the playoffs didn't necessarily go the way that it was expected to for him. At the end, I do think that the play got better for KPJ there, but just a little struggle in the beginning. And again, his first taste of the playoffs. So I'd also just want to know, like, what did the playoffs teach him about approach and what's needed, and especially having a long off season here where you're able to watch what teams were able to be successful. What did he pull from that, especially as a point guard, where it's like, you are in a very interesting situation playing next to Giannis. And every point guard, even before this season, has been in an interesting position playing next to Giannis because he is a guy that does like to have the ball in his hands. Like Jeff Teague made the jokes of like, man, it's kind of boring playing next to Giannis, man. I don't get the ball. Like I want to get the ball. And it's like, all right, Jeff, maybe consider where you were in your career at that time. But nonetheless, I'm just curious too to know about that with KPJ because it's going to be a lot on his shoulders this year, especially coming into a situation where there are a lot of people who just question if what they saw in Milwaukee last year was real. So how do you build on what you established in Milwaukee and show like what happened with the Clippers? The fit in Milwaukee is better. So now how do you continue to grow in it?
Yeah. There's a lot of questions with this team. I think both good and bad, or positive and negative. You can take that of, we'll see which way this goes. I mean, as we kind of started the show last year, the last few years, so you approach these days and media day kind of knowing what to expect. And honestly, you look at it like this is going to be a quick day. Like we're going to hear from Giannis and what it was like to play internationally. We're going to hear from Dame that it's year number 2. I got my full off season with the team. We'll hear from a handful of the new guys. And we always get to hear from Brook Lopez and his jokes on media day, which is going to be sad, Camille, to not have this year. But yeah, you kind of knew what to expect most years. This year, it does have a different feel. We gave the survey, and I've heard from a few other Bucks fans too that, they don't have the expectations that they've carried into a season in years past, which is perfectly fine. And I think, quite frankly, everyone is there. But they do have just as much, if not more, excitement because this is something new and this is something different. So, okay, let's see. Like, I'm not trying to make the comp in terms of on court, but it's in some ways it reminds you of the 2018 offseason and media day where you knew things are going to be different. Like Bud is going to usher in a different style of play. So I'm really looking forward to this. And it was, I've talked about it before, the first preseason game where you saw, I think they took like 54 threes.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Against whoever they played. You were like, this is it? Okay, let's go. So what's the example of that with this team of, wow, okay, this is what it's like to have multiple bigs that can switch out on the perimeter, or, okay, this is what it's like to have a team that's playing fast. Like, that's the feeling I get going into this season.
Yeah, like it's new, like you said, but it's also new in the year in the Eastern Conference where there's no big favorite. Like, of course, there's that tier where people are looking at the Cavs and the Knicks. Like, we kind of expect you to be the cream of the cream for the Eastern Conference, but there's no LeBron-led, Cavs team or the Heatles or anything like that, or even the Celtics from 2 years ago where you're just watching and you're just like, dang, I don't know how anyone's going to catch up or continue pace with this team. But it's a year where it could be anybody's game if you're healthy and playing the right way. So it's fun. I'm ready to get to media day already. I can't wait to hear it. I'll be texting you in the background too, Justin, of like, what else are you hearing that you can't say on Twitter right now that you can't say on the show? I need all the details. But no, I'm excited. Media day means like the season is really, really here.
Yeah. So we are recording this right now. It is just about 8:30 Monday morning. So we're about 2.5 hours away from media day, which again, we encourage you to follow along on socials. I believe the Bucks have a link out there to watch out. I think it's just bucks.com/live. So you can follow along there and hear what's said. And I'll tweet what I can. I'm still not sure of the setup because see if we can get any liners for Locked On, but I'm going to be taping some stuff with some of the players throughout media day. So I'll, depending on what I hear, I really want to hear in real time from Myles Turner, from KPJ, from Kyle Kuzma, and some of those other names, but we'll see. Otherwise, I know I've traditionally just kind of transcribed it as it's going on, but I think there's going to be a decent amount of attention. I do think there'd be a lot more if another team would have just taken care of business last night and put away a team like it looked like they were going to do 10 minutes into the game. But nonetheless, here we are, Camille.
Here we are. And yeah, ties are gross. So let's not talk about the tie. Let's talk about media day when we come back for we're recording later today to continue to wrap up Media Day as well. So everyone listening to this kind of like primer of Media Day, we'll be back in later on today on Monday to kind of recap everything that happened at Media Day for our Tuesday episode.
Yeah. So we'll have the recap, what stood out the most. As you follow along, send in your questions as well, or your feedback and takeaways of what stood out to you. You can leave it in the comments of this show or tweet it at Camille and myself, and we will get into that. Not sure if we'll have Frank or not. It might be a 3-person recap of Media Day, but at the very least, Camille and I will have a recap for you coming up a little bit later today. That'll do it for today's show, though. On to Media Day and on to the season. As you mentioned, training camp is now tomorrow. The first preseason game is 1 week away. I didn't notice either, like the Media Day fan event basically yesterday. I was just thinking, was that in lieu of the scrimmage game? Because I can't remember now. Did they always do the scrimmage prior to Media Day or prior to the regular season?
I think it was always prior to the regular season, but I'd have to double check.
That sounds right. So we'll see. Maybe we get another one of those as well. But yes, leave your thoughts on what you are most anticipating hearing this Media Day in a mere matter of hours. That'll do it for today. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.